Greetings, everyone. This is Pamela Lorenzo, your host of the Leaders Without podcast. Today, I have another powerful, wonderful guest, my new good friend Tucker from beautiful San Diego. We got connected to one of my best friends that I met through the podcast, Rachel. She connected us, and Rachel also connected me to a couple of other wonderful people. One of them being Brian Tarr, one of he holds the record so far of the most appearances in my podcast. Four in each episode was absolutely goosebump inducing to the max. I recommend if you haven't had the chance to listen to it, if anyone, his story is truly powerful. But anyways, today I have the honor and a pleasure of having Tucker here. We had a wonderful conversation last week, I believe, or the week before, and we were supposed to talk for half an hour. We talked for almost 2 hours. We had so much in common, such a connection, and it was a little bit about him. As I said, he's based in San Diego. He wasn't really fulfilled in his corporate career despite being successful. Then that got him into, a negative spiral of getting to drinking, feeling miserable at the age of 40. Then he went into a rehab center, and that changed his life. Started his own business, turned things around. And then also he did something really powerful. 12 years ago, he helped started the TEDx talks in San Diego, which is amazing. We can do an entire show just on that, giving us the inside and out and how to get into TEDx. But we'll do that maybe another time. And as a result of doing that, teaching people how to get into a public stage and speaking, he also did something absolutely phenomenal. Once he mentioned that, I said, "Wow, say no more. I want you to say that, to save that for the podcast." And that is, he went into the local prisons in San Diego and started coaching and teaching the inmates how to speak, how to communicate in a professional, effective way. That was one of the most heart-centered things I've come across my podcast for the past over 200 episodes in 20 months. So kudos for that, brother. And so much more. And if I can... He dropped so many powerful, nuggets that, as I said, we can with quite a few of the quotes that I wrote from him, we can make them into T-shirts and all that. And one of them was, my comeback is my greatest giveback. Absolutely love that. As well as from impossible to I am possible. So I'm possible. That would deserve a T-shirt. I will actually see if I can make it for myself, and I'll put underneath the credit Tucker, your name, brother.
I'll license you the
All right.
content.
We'll talk about the deal after a good bottle of Argentinian wine and steaks. We'll talk about that. But anyways, so and his tagline in a nutshell, he's helping entrepreneurs turning stories into purposeful businesses. I mean, what more can you ask in terms of someone that is all about impact, inspiring others, and doing good around them? So without any further ado, Tucker, brother, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. Glad, honored to be here.
Pleasure's all mine. So, first of all, how is your day so far?
Excellent. I'm trying to start my days off with more meditation, more reflection, and keeping my mindset in the positive sense. And finishing off with something like this is going to make my day even better. So this is a great cap to the day.
Music to my ears. So, as I told you last time when we spoke, the types of conversations I like to have on my podcast is to look under the hood, so to speak, to see what's in your heart and to have a heart-to-heart conversation, to get to know you as a person first and foremost. We're going to talk about your business and the impact you're doing later. So first of all, for people who don't know you, who's Tucker as a person, as a human being?
That age-old question. Well, I'd like to say that for most of my life, I have spent designing, creating, imagining with the goal of helping people. I spent a lot of my life, my earlier years, doodling, drawing, designing, creating things, wanting to be an architect. And I know when you and I talked, it was like, okay, math. I don't think I can do math, but I love the idea of articulating, designing, and building. And then my mom's a nurse. And there's something in me that's a nurturer that likes to take care of people, always wanted to be of service in some way, shape, or form, and helping people through their stuff. So naturally, when I took the design element and the psychology and being of service to others, I'm really that kind of, I'd like to be that brother, that husband, that spouse, that friend that confidant, that soul that helps people,
That leader.
regardless of what situation they're in, the path forward. And nothing better than to find that at the age of 40 to figure out how to do that. But the fact of the matter is I did get there. And that's just something that when I say my comeback is my give back, is helping others find that place of clarity.
You know, you mentioned something truly powerful that really caught my attention. You said at the age of 40. 40 is when magic really happens. That's when you've had enough time to make all the mistakes, all the craziness, to learn to be the wise,
Yeah.
and you're still young enough to really enjoy life. So we can do an entire talk just on all the magic that happens when you turn 40. But anyways, that's
Yes.
powerful. So
Yeah.
now,
I like to tell people, Payman,
mm,
I'm turning 8. Because so there we go, right? I'm in my 8-year-old self in the new life.
that's so beautiful, because one of the most powerful quotes, not quote, just principles I heard recently, was that whatever age you are, even when you're 95,000 years old, always make sure to keep the inner child in you alive, because that inner child in you, that's the very essence of life. That's what keeps you going. The moment you suppress that inner child, you might as well just call it a day and dig a hole and just go 6 feet under, because what's the point of that?
Absolutely.
Love
So
that. Awesome.
today we celebrate our inner child.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Hey, one more. If you keep saying that, I'm just gonna go downstairs, grab my bottle, and just open it live with you. Anyways, so to start off, I'd like to ask you a series of rapid fire questions to further get to know
Okay.
you as a human being. Ready?
Okay.
All right. So now, tell us, what makes you happy as a person and as a human being?
Being a father and a husband and taking care of my kids.
Love that. What makes you
Yeah.
smile?
A good sunset
Oh yeah,
and laughter in my kids' faces.
beautiful. Now let's take the happiness factor a couple of notches higher. What makes your soul come alive? What sets your heart on fire in a positive way?
Specifically watching the light bulb go off in someone's head, and I can see it,
Oh
I
yes,
can feel it, and I watch it when they realize that there is hope and that there is a way to change.
beautiful.
That is, and we'll get into that in the prison work, but there is that light bulb that you can see come through someone's eyes and feel, and that's what really gets me.
Love that. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, what makes you sad and angry?
Anxiety,
Hmm.
something that's out of control that you cannot put a finger on, and it's out of your control, and that for me is anxiety.
I agree. That's why I don't watch the news. You know,
I gave it up a year ago, or actually more than a year ago, probably almost 2 years ago, and it's been the best thing ever.
absolutely, because someone wise told me not long ago. I mean, a few years ago, that if something is important, you will know about it. So you don't have to be glued to it.
It
Something
will
is
get to
gonna.
me somehow.
Yeah,
Somehow it will get to me. I'm not worried about it.
yeah, absolutely. Now, what scares you?
Mm. Um, being alone.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What would you say is your number
And
one?
height,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
and I will and heights. Actually, I shouldn't say heights. Falling from heights absolutely scares me to death.
Have you ever felt from before in your life? No.
I can be in an airplane, I can be in a tall building, as long as I know I can't fall from something. But you put me on a bridge, if I'm not tethered to something that's earthly, huge fear.
So if I were to take you when you next time you come to Toronto, I'll take you to the CN Tower. There is a
The
glass
CN
floor.
Tower,
Glass floor.
good.
You have like almost a mile under you. Would you be able to walk on that?
I think so. If you might have to hold my hand, but I think we might be okay.
Well, someone will have to hold my hand too, because I've never been on it myself neither. So
There you go. Being
awesome.
alone and falling.
Yes,
I don't know if they're connected, but there you go.
maybe, especially if you were to fall alone by yourself.
Yes.
All right. What would you say is your number one personal superpower?
Uh, clarity.
Oh yeah, it's a big one. When was the last time you had a really, really hearty laugh?
Wow.
The kind of laugh that you know you have your cheeks are hurting, your tummy is hurting because you're laughing too much. You have tears coming as out of after smiling, laughing so hard.
Oh my gosh, what a great question.
Thank you.
I would have to say, honestly, and this did come up. We recently got back from a family trip to Europe,
Mm.
and my wife is going to kill me for this. She hates to fly, and she took several sleeping pills.
All
And we
right.
got some great photographs of her on the airplane with the blanket and the eye coverings and this and that. I mean, and we took some family photos, and the three of us, I have two kids, we laughed. I mean, laughed hysterically all the way to the point where we had the flight attendants laughing, and it was awesome. I
And
haven't laughed that hard in quite some
you
time.
can take those pictures, make a PowerPoint out of it, put some music, and make it like
Yeah.
a little
And to this
movie.
day, David, I don't know that she knows that we have them. So I'm gonna save those for a rainy day.
All right, cool, awesome, beautiful. Now, you love traveling, right?
I do.
All right, let me take you now down a different type of traveling, down memory lane.
Yeah.
Go back to when you were a kid. When we're kids, people around us, family, relatives, teachers, friends ask us, so, Tucker, what do you want to become when you grow up? What was your answer as a young boy to that question?
That was the architect in me.
Oh,
It was the way I answered it every single time. When other little boys were like, "Oh, astronaut," or firefighter, almost the stereotypical. I said architect, and I remember a lot of my friends going, kind of like, "What? First of all, what's that?" And then why? Um, but that was the doodling and the drawing and the creative side on me. So it was definitely an architect.
did you get as toys, the Legos, for example, to play with them?
Yeah. I had probably 20 pounds. Well, no, probably 50 pounds worth of Legos.
Oh,
In
wow.
fact, when I did some babysitting when I was a teenager, and I babysat for two boys. And
Wow.
one of the reasons why I loved to do the babysitting was they had Legos. And here I am,
Oh, yeah.
17 years old, getting excited about playing with Legos. And yeah, I loved building cities and towns and structures. And yeah, Legos were a must in our household.
At what point
I
did you,
still can't part with them. My
wow.
son, he's 17. I can't get rid of them. They're sitting right there. I refuse to get rid of them.
At what point in your life, I'm sorry, how young were you when you had this idea in your mind that, hey, I want to be an architect?
8. I remember it.
Was there a specific moment or someone inspired you or?
When I was 8 years old, my dad came home one night and said, "We're moving." And that was
Okay.
a big deal for me. And when we left, I had, friends behind the whole thing. We left and we moved. And one of the things that I did, and I didn't realize this until, years later in some therapy, the drawing was therapeutic. It was calming. It actually really helped my anxiety. So I did find right around that time that we moved and we, new place, new friends, new faces, all of that. I did a lot of drawing, and that drawing really soothed me. So when I looked up careers in drawing, architect came to the top.
Maybe you were a powerful, impactful architect in a previous life, in a past, maybe in Egypt, maybe in Atlantis. Who knows?
Absolutely.
Wow.
It's too bad I don't have any royalties for that.
You have to file a complaint with the universe for that. Not a complaint, but universe always gives you back.
Exactly. Exactly.
Awesome. Now, growing up, what was your relationship with school? Did you love school or did you hate school?
I had a love. Yeah, that's actually a good question. I had a love hate, and here's why. I loved being around people. I
Mm-hmm.
had some really, really great teachers,
Mm-hmm.
and I had good connections with. The reason why I didn't was, especially fourth through about sixth or seventh grade, my first name rhymes with a rather derogatory curse word. You can only imagine
Oh,
the
yeah.
F word, so I got teased a lot for that. So there was a lot of early childhood bullying around my name that it was traumatic for me.
Oh, yeah.
And all the way to the point, Payman, where in fifth grade, I tried to change my name to my middle name, which is Stephen. So, I put it up on the chalkboard and the teacher would ask questions saying, okay, Stephen, what do you, and I wouldn't answer. And I couldn't change my
Yeah.
name. So we scrapped that idea. But then I got to college and the girls liked the name. So I'm like, all right, I like this name.
Yeah.
It was worth the suffering.
That I can relate to that because growing up, my first name being Payman, kids started calling me Pac-Man. And I didn't know any better back then. And I said, well, I don't want to be called Pac-Man, you know?
I can see that.
Yeah, but yeah, I can see it. Wow.
Absolutely see that.
Now,
But I love to learn,
mhm,
but I didn't love numbers. So that was the thing is I loved learning, but the moment you brought in numbers, geometry, loved.
okay.
Algebra, calculus, forget about it. Finance, forget about it.
So would you say that geometry was your favorite subject in school?
Yes, definitely
Okay.
one of my favorites. That and history.
Okay. I love history too. Wow. Good. Now, moving forward, what was your very first job?
Oh, that's a good one. So my dad was in the commercial real estate business,
Mhm.
and the company he worked for had 6 or 7 large shopping centers here in Southern California. And I think I was 14, 15, whatever the child labor laws are in the state of California, whatever that was. I was, and I'm going to put this in air quotes, property management. And
Ooh.
I would climb on those, the back end staircases, those wrought iron staircases that nobody else will touch because of the snakes and the spiders. And I would climb up there with rakes and brooms, and I would scrape the leaves that would come off the trees around to make sure that the gutters were clean. So I would literally sweep roofs in the summertime with the sun reflecting off the tar paper and the tops of the buildings. I would not that I don't remember it at all, but yeah, that was definitely an experience that I will never forget.
So back then, when the girls asked you, "What do you do?" Did you tell them, "Hey, I'm a stunt man"?
I'm in property management.
Oh, okay. That's even better. Okay.
It sounded so official. At least that's how they sold it to me to get me to do the job.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Now, let's talk about your path.
Mhm.
There is, from the moment you left school to now, how would you describe your path? Would you say it was pretty much straightforward, smooth sailing once you get into one lane, or was it more like turns and twists, like a roller coaster?
I would say for the first, and let's say it's from graduating college. Let's
Yeah.
start there. I would say it was fairly straight and a slight incline for probably 4 or 5 years.
Mhm.
We hit a time when the dot-com explosion was
Oh,
happening,
yeah.
and the internet was exploding, and all of the dot-com started, shoveling a bunch of money into the marketing world, and that's where I was. So there was this kind of like explosion of greatness in the marketing world. And all of a sudden, I went from being this highly creative, really strategic marketing person to a collection agent, because
Oh,
none of our clients in the tech space would pay. And that was back when agencies were floating money. So it literally was like this, like exploded. So there was a bit of that kind of reinvention. So I would say it was like this, a little bit of a drop. Moved to San Diego, back to my hometown, re-engaged in the marketing world, and then went back up. And then let's just say for about 8 years, Payman, it was as straight, as flat. There was no elevation, nothing. It was the ceiling. I watched everybody else around me as their careers were going like this, and I was like this. And you and I talked about this, and I think that's at that point we went from this for so long that it started to go like this, and the weight was getting too heavy, and the ceiling was caving in, and all of a sudden, the stuff that was holding up what once was for years just crumbled.
you know,
Um,
that's a powerful, beautiful segue because so the next question I want to ask you is, there's a saying, I'm sure you heard of it, which says, change your story, change your life. And by story, I mean what you tell ourselves in our head all day long. So when you talk away at your lowest, how did you change your story inside your head to change your life? Was it to the help of friends, family, coaches, mentors, relatives, videos. Tell us a process that you use to change your story, to change your life. When you, for example, you said when you were stagnating for a long time, people around you just climbing and you were being stuck there. Tell us, how did you get out of it? How did you change first the story in your mind so that you can change your life?
Yeah, that's I think, where the real vulnerability starts,
Mm,
because I had at that point 40 years old. Kids were 7 and 10.
okay.
Uh, Beautiful wife. We've been married at that point in 15 years. We had the house. On paper, everything looked great. So the story, if you were to see, it would be like, what do you have to complain about? Everything's great. But yes, I was dying inside, to the point where I was at my darkest, at my lowest, in a hotel room, by myself with a bottle, thinking, okay, well, 40 years was good. Gave it a good run. Was not suicidal, but I had resigned to the fact that I was probably expired. There wasn't going to be, the world was, I don't want to say victimization, but the world felt so heavy that it was like, what do I know? I'm 40. I don't have skills or talents that, that are going to take me anywhere right now, because I've been told that you've hit the ceiling, and now that ceiling's cracked. What changed specifically wasn't necessarily the first narrative in my head, was an incredibly fortunate text message.
Wow.
And to this day, well, let me tell you, it was a text message that came from my wife's phone. So I wasn't going to look at it, because at that time, the communication was challenged. It was actually my wife's phone, but it was my son.
Okay.
And the text was very simple. And it just said, it was a question. And it just said, Daddy, when are you coming home?
Whoa.
And at that moment, he still doesn't know this story, and I haven't decided when I'm going to tell him. Because I do believe that moment in time probably saved my life.
Wow.
Um, and within 30 minutes, I was on the phone asking for help. Probably the first time in my entire life that I truly raised my hand, surrendered, and said, I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to do this anymore. And I need some help, and it's okay to ask for help. And I swallowed everything that I had. And within 2 hours, I was in a very safe place, that I could literally let go of everything that was weighing me down. And I could allow for someone to point me in a direction, because I didn't have any guidance. I didn't have everyone had given up on me. I had given up on me. But at the end of the day, my son hadn't. And I do believe that was probably the most pivotal time, because it's the one thing I do remember as clear as day, going through the toughest time in my life.
Wow.
Um, and that narrative moving forward, rather than myself determining what the narrative was, I actually, for the first time, allowed others to help me design the narrative. Because if it was up to me to tell that narrative, I wouldn't be here.
So
I needed somebody else to help me put that narrative together.
powerful. Thank you for sharing that. So that simple yet very, inoffensive message from your son, Daddy, when are you coming home? Do you think that was just a casual message, or was it something much, much deeper? And that message was meant for you at that specific time? Maybe it was something that basically was meant to, you were meant to hear that message at that time, was like a calling, a real calling at the deepest level to really shake you at your core.
That was, yes. And I think that would be the perfect, probably the most pivotal moment, if I were to say, where did that spiritual awakening begin?
Mm,
I always said it started with that.
wow.
Because I think every other sign that was put in front of me, I probably tossed aside or ignored. That one I couldn't.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of an awakening. And I always joke that, a lot of men experience this midlife crisis when they hit their 40s. And I refuse to use that term, and I say midlife awakening. I will not use crisis, because at
Absolutely.
that point, the awakening was the answer to the crisis. And haven't looked back.
You mentioned something that's also very powerful that affects so many men, including myself, you as well. We as men, we're supposed to be the rock for our family. Everybody that needs help, we are there for them. But when it comes to us, we always hesitate. We're afraid to ask for help. Why do you think that so many men are hesitant to ask for help when they need it? While at the same time, they are the people that they are the rock that everybody comes to them. But why are these men, me included, you yourself as well, why do men hold back and not raise their hand and ask for help when they really need it?
I think it's twofold. I think one of it's a societal conditioning that
Mm-hmm.
there is something, especially as you get older, that the role of the man has certain expectations. So it's this incredibly unneeded, unwarranted expectation that is often self-imposed, and that's
Mm-hmm.
but it's natural. And the second one that I think is equally, if not more powerful, is the fear of rejection. Um, Inherently, all humans don't like rejection, but as men, especially if our entire ego is on the line, when that ego gets in the way and that fear of rejection takes over, it literally can debilitate you. I think it can literally strip you of everything, and you don't even recognize who you are.
Yeah.
That's when the mask comes out.
Just
And for me, it was a Jekyll and Hyde kind of a situation.
yeah.
And that moment I felt fear or panic or that sense of failure, I crumbled.
You know, totally agree with that. And also, what I noticed as well is that, and that's a social condition we all unfortunately go through, and that is men are not supposed to be emotional. Men are not supposed to be vulnerable or weak. Men are not supposed to cry. A real man doesn't cry, for example. But sometimes crying is exactly what we need, or just being vulnerable to the right people, because everybody needs help. Even if you're the strongest man, the rock of your community, time will come that you will also need help. And that's a moment not to keep it in, because it's going to bottle up like a volcano and explode. It's going to be ugly. So raise your hand and say, hey, I'm here. I need help. And that's something that, and I've been there myself as well. So, but it's not
Well,
easy.
I'm as you know, I love these little sayings, but they help me visualize, and again, on the narrative side of things. But
Mhm.
to me, it was the only war that I could win by surrendering. Um,
Absolutely.
I mean,
Mhm.
I tried every battle, I tried every weapon, whatever it was, and it was failure every single time. And the best weapon I had was to literally say, "I'm done, surrendering." Um, and I remember, we had to we had to journal all this stuff, and I love writing, and I'd stopped doing that. And one of the first things that they tell you to do, you wake up every single morning, what are you feeling? Write it down. And I remember at one point when I started to get that clarity, which is why that word comes back more and more, payments, that word
Mhm.
clarity. When that clarity first started coming back, I wrote down, in fact, my journal is here somewhere. I wrote down the only, as it says, Dear Tucker, the only thing they have to change is everything.
Wow.
And I had to go back and look and say, okay, I can't just repair this. I can't just fix this. You got to get rid of it. Literally start from scratch. You have to learn a new dance. You have to understand what you're good at. You've denied your gift for so long. You're in this business of helping others, yet you can't even help yourself. And that on top, and then you talk about failure payment, was yet that realization of, gosh, you can't even do what you preach. You can't, I mean, you can't, if you can't even do it for yourself, how are you going to do it for others? So it just, again, whoa, it's just like this pressure cooker, and it just blew up.
It's a perfect example of the imposter syndrome that we all go through, feel at some point.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Powerful. Now, so take us to the moment that you talked about your lowest, and then tell us how slowly how you started coming back out of it.
Yeah. There were a few things that were at play there. One was continuing to be in acceptance, and letting go of shame. I had to forgive myself. I had to really start speaking less and doing more. One of the things that really struck me was when my wife specifically said, and this was such a great line for her, was, "Your words and your apologies no longer mean anything." And
Wow.
it's like, okay. So I was taught that actions speak louder than words, but your actions are the best form of healing your relationships. So every day, intentional action, and specifically contrary action. So what I used to feel safe in doing, don't do what's safe, do what feels uncomfortable. So that contrary action then led to emotional intelligence. It led to building myself back up. It led to here comes that clarity word again. And one of the things that's really tough to understand is when you're in an active state of, whether you're addicted to a substance or whatever it is, you're basically telling your brain to shut down. And I was told it would take 9 months to rewire my brain. That's when you're in misery, that's a long time. But every single time that there was a contrary action, that there was an action put into place, that there was focusing on something that was positive, you could just feel those neurons just clicking back on again. And it was getting brighter, and the thinking was getting clearer. It wasn't feeling as heavy. And it literally, when they say it's day by day, it was day by day. I couldn't future cast. I couldn't future trip. I couldn't catastrophize like I used to do. I had to be completely present in that moment, or I could not get to the end of the day. So getting in the power of the pause, the power of the present. I didn't like to hear my own heartbeat. And that scared me, was when I hear my own heartbeat.
Sure.
So the power of listening to breath. One of the things that I learned specifically is the breath is often more powerful than the heartbeat, because the breath is given the damn oxygen that your blood needs to. So all of that literally anything that's coming into your body, into your breath, is incredibly powerful. So if you're not able to produce the way in which you breathe properly, you're not feeding yourself what you need to be feeding it. Never even thought about that. Nutrition, hydration, all of these things that never really meant much to me at all. The power of rebuilding your cells. You start to learn your own biology. So when I said I had to change everything, I had to relearn what this was. Understanding sensations, understanding how my body worked. Why was and this was back, payment in the 80s, 70s and 80s. Depression was, oh, you're just feeling sad. Anxiety was, oh, you're too anxious. Calm down. What we've determined was I had undiagnosed anxiety disorder probably for a couple decades. No medication, nothing. And I learned about chemical imbalances. They're real things. So I learned how to make sure that my body was balanced. It was talk about self-discipline. This wasn't just like going into a textbook or watching a YouTube video. It was really literally going into like science class and history class and all of these things, chemistry, and relearning the human body. And it was fascinating. But I also know who I am, and I also know who I don't want to be. So the moment it was just as important for me to know what I didn't want to do or didn't want to be than it was to know what I want. Because I was a perfectionist. It's like, I need to know what my job is, what my salary is, where, like, it was just like this, boom, 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 boom. The moment I said, I don't want to do this, and I don't want to do this, all of a sudden what I wanted to do started appearing. That's never taught, right? It's just learned. And I think those are the kinds of things that, you reflect back on raising kids these days, and you're starting to say, this is how I'm going to do it differently. What does emotional intelligence look like? Mm-hmm. My kids, I can tell you right now, and I love this, is one of the things that we feared was this traumatic process that I went through was going to damage or destroy, that generation of our family. It has made us incredibly stronger. My kids are more prepared for school. They're more prepared for life. We understand the power of emotional intelligence. They're taking the time to understand it. They listen. I would never have these conversations with my parents.
Sure.
Ever.
Absolutely.
I don't think I talked to my parents from the time I was 14 until I was in college. And now we're sitting down having those conversations and discussing it and sharing it, because I don't want my son to have to go through life feeling like everything has to be buried. Mm-hmm. And the only way to get it out is when you explode. And that was my life. My only way out was exploding. And clearly I was done putting the fires out, and so was my spouse. Yeah, that was a long-winded answer for that, but It's a journey.
Oh,
You know, it
absolutely.
wasn't a light switch. It's definitely a journey.
Absolutely. Wow. Powerful. So many questions. Um, could take, if I were to ask all the questions that came to mind, we'd be here till when the cows come home, but
Save that for the next one.
absolutely. So many things. So, wow. So you mentioned after that, you went, uh, you went to a rehab center
Mhm.
to turn your life around. You stopped drinking. You get your life back on track. You started your own business. What was the business that you started?
It started off, one thing I made a promise to myself was I was not going to take a job or find a job that I was settling for,
Mm,
because I had settled honestly, my entire life. I settled for something because it was safe. And I made it work out so that I had a little bit of time to do that. But I really wanted to explore what was out there and not just follow what I knew I was good at, but I needed to follow something that I was passionate about. Because at my last job, I was good at what I did. I'm not going to deny that, but I was miserable. It didn't matter. Um, I was completely, I was wealthy on the outside from a skills perspective, but I was dirt poor on the inside, and I needed to figure out a way to create that internal wealth. So I did a lot of self-development, professional development, emotional intelligence training. Like I invested, you know what? I invested in myself for the first time since, a college education. Outside of a good meal, investing in my mental health, investing in my future. And the moment that I just started talking to people about what lights them up, what inspires them, people said, oh, you should talk to this person. You should talk, whatever it was. Organically, I just started building people around me that wanted to see me succeed. And I was done with surrounding myself with people who were good at what they did, but they weren't necessarily in it to help other people. And I
wow.
was really good about surrounding myself with people that were inner directed, but I wasn't with people that were outer directed. And I'm an outer directed person. So I just started hanging out with new people. Our entire friend connection changed. Professional. I don't actually talk to anyone from my former professional life, and I haven't for 7 or 8 years. Every single person that I work with today, I've only met within the last 7 to 8 years, but they're
Wow.
the most powerful, most invested, highly intelligent, in it to win it. As you say, when you work with people, they become your friends. These are people that I would go to their, kids' weddings. I mean, that kind of a thing. I never had that ever. So I took some time to just kind of figure out what that looked like. I took a couple of consulting jobs. I helped some people out and some freelance work. And it wasn't until someone reached out to me who I had coached at TEDx a few years back, reached out and said, we're looking for someone that can help people brand themselves.
Wow.
And I'm like, I've branded things for the last 20 plus years, tires, booze, insurance, real estate, but I'd never branded people like I had doing with TEDx, helping people get on the stage and being thought leaders and then sharing things that they want to share that's actually going to change the world. And I said, I'm going to answer this. What the hell? On a whim. Took a couple of freelance gigs, and within 2 weeks, they're like, we need more of this. Let's build a business around it. And for the first time ever, I didn't go searching for it. I wasn't seeking out, I went in. And the moment I went in, something on the outside came to me. That power of that magnetism. In fact, my word this year is magnetic,
Yes.
because I love those things that just get pulled together when the energy is right. Um, and that continued to grow. And then once I got to a point where I understood where my sweet spot was, COVID hit.
Oh,
And it was like, okay, this higher power is deciding to put something in front of me. What are you going to do now other than drink? I'm going to
mm,
test you. What are you going to do differently? And at this point, I even picked up a drink. You don't even think about it after, this was 4 or 5 years into it. And I said, where others are shrinking, I'm going to grow. I'm going to follow exactly what I'm doing. More and more people started reaching out. COVID actually created an opportunity. And I just found myself every day reinventing and talking with people. And at some point, someone said, I'll pay you for it. And I went, oh my gosh, I'm onto something. Is this what entrepreneurship looks like? Is it actually possible to be an entrepreneur by following something that's been in your mind forever, but you've been either too scared to do it or have been told it's not going to make you any money? And for the first time ever, I put all of those narratives away and said, but what would happen if it did work?
Power of question, asking the right question.
And it did.
Mhm.
And I haven't looked back. And I get to meet people like you,
Thank you.
people like Rachelle. And at the end of the day, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Yes, there's stresses and there's unpredictable things, and there's financial insecurities that are a big trigger for me. But at the same time, whenever there's a dip, there's always something that comes back around to support it. Every time I think, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this, and then boom, something hits you in the face and said, don't you dare, stray from the path that you're on, because you've spent way too much time envisioning it for years.
Even the dibs, they're there for us because these are the moment, the opportunities for us to learn the most valuable lessons. One thing I learned through my spiritual awakening is there's no wrong turn, there's no mistake. Even if on the outside it might look you made a stupid mistake, nothing is stupid. It happened because you were meant to go through that to learn from it. Just like the cheesy line in marketing that says you either learn or you earn. The same thing applies here. You know, whatever happens to you, to me, to all of us, sure, it might have hurt at the time, but it was meant to happen for us because it was part of our next phase. Just like I like saying, we all go through our fair share of dark time strategies. They hurt a lot when we go through that. And then those moments, dark moments, become our story. That story becomes our gift. And most importantly, those gifts become then our responsibility to share it, because this life is a school. We're here not only for us to learn, to go through challenges, lessons, to grow ourselves, but most importantly, to take those lessons, those gifts, and then share it with the world so others can benefit from it, so we can all elevate together. And that's one of the ultimate reasons why we're all here. To another powerful thing you said, that's again t-shirt worthy, and I wrote it down when we were talking: where others are shrinking, I'm growing. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer that you either make decisions out of fear or love. Shrinking's fear, growing is love. So every time I look at it, I'm like, okay, are you making this decision based on fear, or is it's love? And if it's fear, figure out a way to make it about love. Even if it's not the outcome that you want, but make it about love. And I think one of the things that I've learned too is shed the people that no longer serve you.
Oh, absolutely.
Get rid of them. It's a hard thing to do. And here's the other thing we found too, Payman, with kids. Sometimes you're kind of forced into certain friendships because your kids, are playing with certain kids, whatever it is, sports, all that kind of stuff. But the moment it becomes toxic, the moment that it becomes a one-sided equation, get rid of it. And that was one thing that my wife and I learned that was really powerful, was surround yourself with people that want to see you accelerate and not fall to pieces. Because they're out there and they're everywhere. And that was part of my problem, was keeping up with the Joneses, seeing other people this and that. I'm like, well, that's not me. But I'm definitely wealthier on the inside. I don't need those other kinds of things. And the moment we started shedding some of those toxic relationships, things changed. The other thing I determined was having my own personal board of directors. I have 5 people that I know that I can contact whenever I have a problem. Because whenever I had a problem, I was my own CEO, board of directors, chairman, whatever I was, HR, and I should have fired myself years ago, but I didn't. But I didn't have that group of individuals ever. And it can't be your spouse. It can't be a parent. It needs to be people that see you outside of that familial surrounding. And I know of those 5 people, I can call them right now. They will pick up the phone.
Absolutely.
I never had that.
Just like the saying says, the average of the 5 people you hang out most, if the people you hang out most are broke, you will be the 6th. If the people are fat and lazy, you will be the 6th. If the people are absolutely crushing it in business, you will be the next. Because when you hang out with successful people that bring you up, you see, wait a second, these guys are normal people like me and them. There's nothing special about them. It's just a matter of work ethics, believing in yourself, and just executing. That's something that you can do as long as you put your mind to it. And I agree with that. That's beautiful.
One thing that I ended up doing a lot of men's groups, some men's retreats, like really kind of shedding a lot of that toxic masculinity. And ended up doing a lot of research in a couple of these groups that I was in. And back in the 80s, the average number of males that considered that they had a good group of friends, it was like 7 males to 1.
Oh,
So
yeah.
like in the 90s, that was down to 5. By the time the early 2000s hit, it was down to 3. And now most men can say 0.7
I agree.
men in their life that they feel that they can trust to have a really good conversation. 0.7, not even a whole person. So that's a whole nother kind of thing too, in terms of where men's mental health has gone too, which is I take that very seriously, because it's something that I didn't know that I struggled with, but I have. And so there's a lot of learning to do amongst us men in terms of what we've been through and being able to share. And that's just a new phenomenon too. It's brand new.
Yeah. Wow. Powerful. Beautiful. One thing I wanted to share with us, because that was really powerful, that really caught my attention, is said once you started coaching people about becoming better speakers and all that, how did you get into the prison system and going there and coaching the inmates to talk,
Yeah.
to better express themselves and communicate?
That was it was a TEDx connection. So I spent many years helping put together TEDx San Diego. Um, and one of the organizers connected with someone who was doing prison work. And they reached out to California system and California Department of Corrections and said, hey, we want to do TEDx inside prison. And we thought we'd get laughed at. And they said, actually, we need some good programming and we have a budget to help support it. That sounds like something we're interested in doing. And at that time, I didn't know much about it. But instead of coaching, I was asked to attend for the first time. So I attended the first TEDx Donovan Correctional. And here I am thinking, Payman, it's like, okay, we're going to be, the glass is over here. They're going to be over here. And there's going to be a stage over here. And the day you walk in there, all of a sudden, they walk you right onto the yard. And you are right there with 1,200 men in a high security prison. And you're there. I mean, it's like, here you are. I sat there for, and we had to be in there for about 4 hours or so. And I sat there thinking, this is one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had in my life, but I don't know how to articulate it or communicate it to anybody else. Anyways, long story short, after the event was over, I said, I need more of that. That was the coolest thing ever. So I reached out to the organizer and said, you may or may not know me. She goes, no, I know you've been on TEDx San Diego. We're going to continue to do professional development programs inside prison because they get RAT credits. And RAT credit is basically, if you do professional development, it takes days off of your
Wow.
prison term. So, and certain people qualify for it and so forth. So I said, sign me up. So within a few weeks, I got my training. I was certified. I got my, approval to go inside prison. And on Sundays, I was doing spiritual gatherings and helping on Sunday services because that was of interest. And then I helped come in and I was doing conflict resolution through storytelling, which was freaking, I mean, you're literally in there with former gang members and they're trying and breaking down in terms of the false narratives that these guys tell each other of what's really happening. It was powerful. Then we were doing public speaking. There was an art class, expression through art. And then we brought TEDx back. And one of the things that I got to do is every Tuesday for 3 hours in the afternoon, I was in prison and we sat around and they got to manage it. They got to select the speakers. They got to help put the theme together. And then we give them as much as that they can do, and then got to coach them on their ideas. And, for the first time ever, seeing these guys most of them have never spoken in front of anyone before. And, the first time I walked inside prison, a gentleman named Shaky came up to me, and that was his name. Really, really nice guy. Shook my hand because he shakes everybody's hands, which is why he gets the name Shaky. And he goes, I just want to let you know something, Tucker. I said, when they put you in prison, they strip you of everything and they fill you with nothing.
Wow.
And I have never forgotten that. So we got to work with him the whole thing. And after the first week, he pulled me aside on the yard and said, I just want to let you know for the first time in 15 years, you're filling me with something.
Wow.
And I mean, it was just probably one of the most prideful moments in my life of being able to say,
Sure.
okay, this is, and I'm not making any money off of it. I mean, this is strictly just giving and
Transformation. Yeah.
watching. And I mean, and this is as I'm growing as a new person again and learning more about myself. And I took those same principles and those same learnings back to my clients outside of the walls. And my inmates end up becoming some of my best teachers. Some of my best parenting advice, fatherhood advice came from a gentleman inside prison because he's had to raise 2 kids on his own from inside the walls of prison, and he can do it.
Whoa.
It's powerful.
Oh,
So
yes.
yeah, those were the experiences that, I mean, I would come home on Tuesdays and, my wife would be so nervous. Oh my God, he's inside prison. I would come home happier than ever. It was such an incredible, amazing experience. And you start to really break down humanity in a way where, I had a 15-year-old kid, the youngest imprisoned man in California, 15 years old. He was in for murder, and brilliant musician, but a very troubled kid. And I remember him saying, after I was coaching him on his TEDx talk, he said, if I had met someone like you when I was 13 or 14, I wouldn't be in here today.
But
One
actually,
person.
I would venture saying that was meant to happen for that person to do the crime that they committed so that you and them can cross paths. It was meant to happen. Nothing is casual. Everything there's a purpose, there's a reason, and at the right time.
Yeah.
Are you still going to prison and coaching those inmates?
No, we got shut down because of COVID.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it got really bad. And then, with COVID, they had a huge hepatitis outbreak because everyone was inside so much. So they had quite a bit of health problems. I think part of it's opened back up again, but to be honest, Payman, I haven't re-engaged. I'd like to, but and I have some other people that have said, "Hey, I would love to go into prison with you, if we can." So I'll be back. I just don't know when.
You know what? While we're talking, me being a podcaster, I said this would make for a phenomenal podcast. Going inside the prison and listen. I help professionals and coaches set up the podcast. If you ever need help with that, I would be glad to help you with that. No charge, just because I want to help you get those words out. That's
That would
powerful.
be cool. That would be really cool. I know there are a couple out there, but I don't know how it works with the system. But that would be incredibly powerful. They do have access to certain networks, and they can bring in certain content into the prison system, certain channels and certain ways of doing it. But that would be.
You can go to the prison system each week. You just bring your microphone, your computer. You just sit down with one or even 2 or 3 guys, just free flowing, jamming, and just soaking the wisdom.
Yeah, it's the hard part. You can't bring a computer in.
Oh,
There's so many. I know it's all the way down to what color. You can't wear jeans because blue is the color of the inmate's pants. So you have to wear pants that are either black or white or tan, like all the way down to what you wear. I mean, it's a very. If you looked at my closet, I had literally my prison uniform. I called it my prison uniform. It was black shoes, black pants, a white shirt, and yeah, it's but there's probably ways around it, but that's a really cool idea.
or you can just go with one of those recorders, just let them speak and just record it, and you just after that, turn it into a podcast. Another thing you can do is this would make also for a phenomenal book. You can just let them share the stories. You just, as I said, just go in with a recorder, let them speak, and transcribe it.
Yeah.
If you need help with those, because that's what I do, let me know.
I'm sensing a future project here, Payman.
Absolutely, because it's all about helping and empowering people that needs it the most.
Absolutely.
Just like you said, the greatest, most fulfilling moment that you just shared was that when that inmate told you that, hey, for the first time in my life, someone actually filled me with something. That's the ultimate compliment, the ultimate reward. From a personal perspective, because it doesn't have to be about money. Money is nothing. Money is just icing on the cake. But what really matters is, number one, for me, the 2 greatest benefit, not just benefit, rewards of business. One, the transformation you help others achieve, and two, the wonderful friendships you build along the way. And the money is the icing on the cake.
Yeah. I think the one that was really cool for me, I will say this, one of the classes I taught was entrepreneurship. I will
Oh,
tell you,
yeah.
some of the smartest entrepreneurs are inside prison walls because they literally have nothing, but they can come up with some of the most ingenious ideas. But I will say one of the things that was really cool was, the food is just so bad inside prison. They simply asked for some soil, some seeds, and some water to create a garden. And within 6 months, they were able to actually create an above ground garden in one of the prison yards, and they were actually able to grow their own food. It was really a powerful experience. But those are the little things that we all get take for granted because we don't even think about it. But yeah, there's some pretty intelligent people behind those walls.
To be a criminal, to be a gangster, it's not easy job. No, that's not something anyone can do. You have to be beyond smart, street smart, not just book smart. Imagine if those guys were to channel that intellect, those efforts into something constructive, something positive, you know?
And that's exactly what they saw in engaging in these programs. They started feeling better. What was really cool was being able to go into an AA meeting or an NA meeting and listening to these guys who have been somewhat forcibly been into sobriety, but being able to watch someone denounce a gang is a huge accomplishment, and also a very risky thing to do inside prison.
Since you don't want to
But
be
to
a
be able to get,
snitch, you know?
yeah, but to be able to get up there and do it, and the courage, what was cool was to see that the courage was courageous. When someone spoke, it's like, oh, I want to do that. Because they literally saw, remember when I said the light bulb go off was one of the things that absolutely lights me up? I was thinking about these guys because these are the guys that have never had light bulbs. It's just always been dimmed. And the moment they get up there and they talk and they speak and they're vulnerable for the first time, I mean, they just smile. And then you see these other guys who have never ever said a word, smiled, or whatever, clap, stand up, smile. I mean, it's just the humanity that's behind it is just it's and that at that moment I realized the power of what storytelling can do, and that helped actually that prison work helped funnel into some of my strategies for what I do today, because I saw it work in the darkest of places. So, it's, yeah.
You could start an entire movement and train other professionals to go into the prison system, not just in the US, but Canada, and expand that to Europe. And before you know it, worldwide, because that's a phenomenal service.
Mhm.
That's one of those, service for humanity that every society around the world will absolutely
Yep.
drastically benefit from.
Yep.
This can be
Absolutely.
a, a high, a multiple billion-dollar business.
Yeah, it could if the system pays for it.
If the system supports it, that's a bigger question,
Yes,
you know?
supports it. There you go. Supports it.
Yeah.
And I will say that's one thing that was really tough in terms of fundraising and so forth is it's very hard for someone to understand why someone would want to invest any dollars into rehabilitation because a lot of people don't believe in it or they don't see that it works and they haven't experienced it. And I understand that. It's a difficult sell outside of the walls. But the moment, what was one time we actually brought in an investor group because they were so blown away because one of them actually went to the event and they walked in and said it was by far one of the most incredible experiences they've ever had in their life. Um, it's so hard to get funding back because a lot of people just don't understand that there's a need for it.
Wow.
Do you
Well,
know it costs the state of California $75,000 a year per inmate?
wow. What if they were to invest, say, $10,000, have 75,000 to re-educate one
Yeah.
person at a time, and then pay you 10,000, everybody would come,
Yeah.
they would still save what,
Yeah.
50K,
Yeah.
with that
Who knows?
towards, upgrading the infrastructure, for example,
Yeah,
if we had a
exactly.
competent government.
Yes. Then we get into bureaucracy, and that's a whole nother podcast.
Oh, yes. Let's not even get there. Yeah, no. Wow. Powerful. So, wait a second. There's so many things that we can talk about, and it's been almost an hour and a half. Um, Let's fly it through. Let's fly it through. Okay. Wow. Wow. Powerful. Now, what do you see? What's your vision moving forward with this business? Do you want to go back, stick in the, I mean, not stick, but try to get back into the prison system, or do you have a bigger vision for the impact you want to achieve?
I I have a part of me is there's always going to be a passion for that part
Hmm.
uh, of my of my life. And it's, the one thing I do have to make sure of is that, I am the provider and that I do things that are, that are smart and for the family.
Hmm.
Um, I definitely, if I have some service work, that's where I would take it, for sure. But I definitely see more and more individuals that I get connected with, interestingly enough, getting connected to a very high net worth group of individuals that want to see wealth looked upon differently in the world. So I want to get to people that have influence, that have the power to make change, and give them that structure to help make that change. There's a lot of people that want to do it. Let me go back to that word clarity. They don't have the clarity of purpose on where to start. How do they communicate that? How do they start that? So if I can continue to kind of move the business in that direction to help people find clarity of purpose, to do more good, that's where I want the business to go. If that ends up in a prison system, if it ends up in at-risk youth, whatever that is, then I'd love that. If it happens at in a wealthy billionaire practice, fine. As long as it's moving towards something that's going to create some sort of a impact, I'm all
Hmm.
game. I will say one thing, that, not to bring the prison thing back up, but one of the things that we asked the men, of all the things that you want to see differently, what would be your number one passion if you weren't inside prison? What would you be
Wow.
doing? 90% of them, unaided, said that they would focus on at-risk youth so they didn't end up like themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
They
Yeah.
wanted to break this cycle. So when I think about it from that perspective, where can I break cycles if I don't have the power to do it necessarily from a business perspective inside prison? Where else can I break cycles that are continually keeping us in these perpetual patterns of misery, you know, um, just things that aren't adding value to the world? Where can we break cycles to help men feel more empowered and more seen? How can we help women take on more leadership roles and be seen? How can we prepare youth for leadership roles that we're not preparing them for? So if there's a way to use the power of voice and story and all of those things to create better leaders, um, for people to be seen, for people to be heard in ways that are creating more impact, that's where I want to build a business. Um, and I'm starting to see a trend. What's great is the people that are getting referred to me are in that space. So I'm not trying to hunt for the right people. There's that
Mhm.
magnetic word again. Finding people like yourself, starting to feel like those people are hiving together, supporting one another, collaborating. Those are the kinds of things that I want to see the business do more of. Having conversations like this, more podcasts, more authentic conversations. Business doesn't always have to be about business. Um, One of the things that I had the privilege of doing was speaking at a Microsoft conference a few years ago for women leaders. And 24 hours before I got on the stage, I changed my talk completely. They wanted me to talk about branding and business, and so, and I changed it, and I said, I'm going to tell you right now, your best form of business development to build the most authentic business professional relationships is to be able to tell your story in a way that helps other people. I think that's where I want to focus. And I got up there and I said, if you don't feel comfortable being heard, being seen, being vulnerable in the workplace, you're not in the right place. If you don't feel like you're connected to the work you do, you're not in the right place. That felt really powerful to me. And I remember speaking to an executive VP afterwards. She's at Microsoft. She goes, thank God, finally a business talk that wasn't about business. And how do we bring humanity back into business? It just there. I mean, my mind can go in a million different directions with this, but those are the conversations that I never thought possible. When you're in school, you're taught skills like skilling, like business skilling, things that are so, yes, they're helpful, but we're not taught humanity skills and people skills and emotional intelligence, all these things that we just kind of fall upon. And for some people, it works really well. And for others like myself, I fell flat, and I don't want others to fall flat, and I think so. There's always this kind of, we're taught when you go into this recovery world that the only way you can keep something so powerful and meaning to yourself is to give it away.
Absolutely.
I did not understand that until I got into this business.
Wow.
The more that I give, the more that I'm receiving. So I go back to that, that comeback is the greatest big give back. And that comeback is being of service to others, heart-centered leadership, leaders with purpose, all of that stuff. That's where we want business to go. So if I can be one of those beacons to help start the conversation, guide the conversation, find people like yourself, and create more movement-based work around that, so be it. Sign me up. You want to put me in a cubicle and, output, reports and all this stuff? No, not going to happen. Life's too short. There's too much value in relationships and what's out there that we're not exercising, that we need more of that heart-centered leadership.
You're just speaking my language.
There's my talk today.
You're just speaking my language, because it's exactly what I've been talking on my podcast for the past 20 months. Because sure, we all need to make money, but let's do so in a way that is meaningful, impactful, purposeful. If you can, from my experience, the best way to really make competition irrelevant is to make your business not just about money, but about impact. Be an impact driven, a cause driven, a heart centered business. Then you will become, untouchable in your business,
Right.
because more and more people, through all this awakening that the world is going through, more people are looking to do business with people that are more than just about money. They're more about impact, or because people want to give, want to contribute, want to do good.
Yeah.
And if we can give them an opportunity to do good through the purchase of our products, our services, just by aligning their business with our businesses in the same way, not only you're getting a fantastic service or product, but also you're doing good, then you're basically you're writing your own check.
Yeah.
Because this is what more and more people are doing. So
yeah. And there's always room to create more impact in business. Always. I mean, there's just, I had a friend of mine who I went through a lot of my journey with, and he runs a very small auto mechanic business in Spokane, Washington. Nothing fancy, very blue collar, don't make a ton of money, but they are comfortable enough. And I said, and he goes, I made sure that even though I was taking over the family business, I was going to do it differently. And I said, what did you do differently? He said, I only employ veterans, at-risk youth, and people that don't have the resources to exercise their gifts. Well, come on.
Wow.
It's an auto mechanic shop that literally is giving life to people because they don't have the resources to exercise their gifts.
I applaud that person.
I'm like, come on, like, hello, like that. I mean, there's a perfect example when you say, oh, well, that could only happen. It only happens in the uber wealthy industries and this. I mean, no, it doesn't. It does not. And I can tell you right now, I did it in prison for free. So don't tell me it can't exist.
And you know what?
elsewhere.
And these people that are the so-called untouchable, that nobody wants to hire, they will be some of the most grateful, some of the most hardworking employee that you will ever have.
Yeah. Yeah.
They
So
will
there's stories like that all over the place. And I think we just sometimes have been conditioned to be about making money and the bottom line and this and that. And one of the things I thought was really powerful, I was working with an older gentleman who had been in a Fortune 500 company for years. And I asked him, I said, if you had to do a keynote talk outside of the business, what would you tell the world? And he goes, my talk would be about why the Fortune 500 are going to fail. And I kind of went, oh, what do you mean? He goes, they're absolutely turning a blind eye to what the new generation needs. There's no succession planning whatsoever. And if you're not going to amend and create a culture for the next generation, they're going to go start something themselves. So the future of what used to be will die. And I thought, what an incredible analogy to anything, any business that needs to be revived or needs to change or whatever it is. Build it for people so they feel valued and seen and heard and want to do more. And this is coming from an 80-year-old white guy who's been in corporate America for, billion years. You don't hear that often. And so I think there's so much to be had. I just wish in my own life that I had discovered that in my 20s. But then I go back and say, you know what, then I wouldn't have had the experience that I had. And I don't know that I would be prepared to do what I'm doing today when I was in my 20s.
But you know what? With the way medicine is progressing, the 40s are becoming your new 20s. Our parents lived up to 60, 80. We would probably live to 140, 150.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I call that doing business the God's way. So, for example, the traditional business way is for me to win, it means I have to screw you. You have to lose. But it doesn't have to be that way. We can both win, because if I win, you win, we will be doing business forever. But if I win and you lose, I will never see you again. And that's not how business is done or scaled. Not to mention the reputation that goes with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what I call it, doing business the God's way, the universe's way, whatever you want to call it, because it's all about, I've been blessed to have lived in 10 countries, 4 continents, and regardless of whether you're white, black, blue, green, whatever, Muslim, Jewish, Indian, Buddhist, whatever, all at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We want to be respected, valued, cared for, have opportunities.
Yeah.
That's what, whether you're American, Chinese, whatever you are, Israeli, Palestinian, Brazilian, Argentinian, they all want the same thing. Respect me. Let me be in peace. Let me provide for my family. And let me be loved. Let me allow me to love you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's what we all have in common.
Yeah. I always say that the 3 most things that I've seen in the research: trust, love, and acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are not building a business that allows your customers, clients, employees, culture to value those 3 things, you're not going to last.
I will share one last thing about this topic. I was reading a stat that says, with all else being equal, there was a study done by Deloitte in the US back in 2001. With all else being equal in terms of, career growth, in terms of, say, salary, benefits, prestige, and all that, 75% of those people would rather work for a company that is cost driven than one that is just profit driven. That says it all.
Yeah. Mental Health America put out they do one every year. And in last year alone, 65% of Americans started a new job search. 65%.
Especially now during the pandemic, with what is called the Great Resignation phase. 25% of the workforce have quit because they realized that their job wasn't what they were looking for.
Only 22% of the American workforce actually feels purpose in what they do. That's sad.
Yeah. And I've talked to so many of those people on my podcast. Actually, I'm one of those people myself, because before that, I was all about money, 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 keeping up with the Jonas. Oh, he got a new car. I got to get a new one, a big house, whatever. Or he got iPhone 12. I have to get the iPhone 45,
Yep.
What for? So as I told you last week when we spoke, some of my most fulfilling times when I was actually literally living with nothing, $20 a week. I told you that story in Hong Kong, running out of money. If it wasn't for my friends, kindness, it would have been to allow me to crash on his couch for a few weeks. I would have been on the street with $20 a week to live on, where my, splurge moment of the week was just going to McDonald's, getting like the Big Mac combo. But you know what? Those were some of my most happiest, fulfilling moments, and as a result of that, it really makes you really understand. Because again, even in the darkest time, those are the most beautiful, powerful lessons. I realized that, hey, I don't need money to be happy. If I can be happy with $20 a week in one of the most expensive cities in the world, it almost made me have a sense of almost invincibility.
I was going to say that that's survival right there.
Hey, you want to fire me? You want to give him this loan or whatever? Go ahead. You want to call the cops? Here's my phone. Use my phone. When you take away that power from people,
yeah,
you become untouchable, unstoppable, and that's where the magic starts. And that's what I was able to bounce back. Now I'm in the best position I was ever in my life in every aspect, and the doors are only getting opened even bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Because just like you mentioned, when you surrender, when you realize what really matters, because one thing I noticed since having my spiritual awakening over the past 2 years, when you focus your life and your business on impact and doing good, it might sound cheesy, but it's not cheesy. The money's going to take care of itself.
Yeah.
It's going to come automatically. I've seen that happen in my life in countless ways that just defies any logic.
It makes no sense other than there is a higher power at play that is rewarding the passion, the inspiration, the humanity that you're bringing to the table. And that's where I didn't believe it until I actually felt it and saw it. And you can't tell other people about it. They have to experience it. But I honestly, Payman, if I hadn't done the full acceptance, the full surrender, and literally wiping the slate clean, and literally unlearning the false narratives, unlearning the imposters, unlearning all of those limiting beliefs, I would have been right back in it, which is the number one reason people relapse, is they cannot erase their hard drive. They go right back to the existing operating system and expecting it to change. Well, it's not.
Listen, brother, we can talk for hours and hours. This is powerful. Let's start wrapping this up. We definitely have to do a part two. Part two soon. To finish off, I'd like to ask you, so you talked a little bit about your business. Tell us in a nutshell, what exactly is your current business? What are you doing, and what is the impact you're having through your business?
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. So I operate underneath, myself. So I'm a sole consultant, sole proprietor, and then I outsource other consultants and a collective group if I need to. But I focus on one of three things: brand architecture, which can come in the form of personal brand architecture, being a thought leader in your space, as well as helping companies restructure. And I spend a lot of time helping companies restructure, focusing on more healthier workplace cultures and more values aligned systems and so forth. The second is speaker development. So helping people, whether it's on the TEDx stage, give a keynote, or just learn more powerful communication skills, and even uncovering what are their hidden gifts and areas of expertise, those specialty topics, those things that they don't really bring to the surface in their job, but they want to be more of it in that thought leadership space. So a lot of speaker development, that sort of thing. And then what I call story leadership. How do we as leaders use our stories to create more heart-centered opportunities, healthier workplaces, and allowing leadership to not just focus on the product and service that we sell or provide, but really focusing on what do I bring to the table as a human, and what's the collective humanity that the company brings together that makes it so special. So it's kind of retraining a lot of what it's unlearning what a lot of leadership is and retrain it through a different perspective. And those are the three areas. And then often, there's some collectivity amongst the group. So I'll do some masterminds or whatever that might look like, some group coaching, but it's very organic. But I focus on those three things. As long as I feel like there's impact in place, then I find a way to make it work. If it's not, and I will tell you, Payman, for the first time in 48 years on this planet, I've been able to say no. I've never been a no man. I've always been, yeah. It's like I can please you, but it has to be within that alignment. Or if you're not in the business of giving back, don't talk to me.
You're speaking exactly my language, because when I invite for my podcast, I don't care about what revenue level you earn. The only question I ask you and other people is, what is the cause you're passionate about? If I see that your business is not about cause, I will turn you down. And I've turned down some 7-figure people on my podcast because we're all about money. I'm not into judge, because I was that person not long ago, but I'm a different stage. I want to be now it's all about impact. So I'm just like you. I'm being pitched with ideas, so-called opportunities all day long. The first question I ask, and the only thing I look at first, is not the financials. but what is the impact this business is having now, or what is the impact this will have as a result of me being there? If the impact is
Yeah.
not there, I don't even care about the financials.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I'm glad that you said that, because usually the first question I ask specifically is, it's, oh, what are your business goals? The first thing I ask is, what are your impact goals? How are you going to measure impact? And if they can't answer the question and they don't want to answer the question, that's not going to work.
You know,
Or that's the question I need support with and help with. I need to find clarity around that. Help me build my business around creating goals around impact, not that are based just in finance or
there's a
numbers.
question that everybody is probably the first question they ask you whenever they meet you. So what do you do? Instead, I ask, what is the impact you're having in the world?
I'm so glad you. So I always say, the next time you go to a party, a cocktail party, instead, especially if it's a networking event, don't ask somebody what they do. Ask them when they wake up in the morning what lights them up, and you will know
I
that
love
person.
that.
You will know that person within 30 seconds, way more than if you talk to them for 15 minutes about business.
I will borrow that question. I will add them to the list of questions on my podcast. What is the
And
first
you
thing
will
that
be
lights you?
remembered for that question, because people don't ask that question. And
Say
a
that
lot of
again.
people just, and here's the other thing, if they can't answer it, they remember you because they can't answer it. And then they try to figure out, I've had that where it's happened before, and they can't answer it. By the end of the evening, they come find me. I figured it out. I know what it is.
Good
And they
job.
get excited about it. I'm like, that's great. If you don't know, figure it out though, because that's going to change your mindset. Yeah, it definitely jars people.
So what lights you up in the morning when you wake up? That's a beautiful question. Yes, love that. So I'm so delighted that we're on the same page. It's almost like sometimes I'm just listening to myself talking. But
Except this was a lot more fun.
yeah, absolutely.
At least I answer. You won't answer yourself, right?
Yeah, and my mirror is wearing green. I'm wearing black. So green. So it's beautiful. Thank you. I love you. That's amazing. Awesome. Now, a couple of more questions about your business. What would you say is your ideal client avatar?
I would say there's a few personas that I specifically look for. Entrepreneurs specifically looking to build businesses that have some sort of an impact, that need the guidance, the storytelling, the messaging in order to make that a reality. So entrepreneurs specifically in that impact space. And then I like to call them the corporate burnouts, those that are kind of like me, those that are stuck. A lot of women and men who want to reinvent. They want to change. They want to look for something different, but they don't know where to start. Or they have their ideas, they have some, but they don't know how to articulate it. They don't know how to build a brand around it. So there's some storytelling behind that. And then I help, organizations and companies figure out where they've been stuck and how do they unlearn the current culture or the message and relearn something else that their employees are going to be rallying around. So it's kind of like a re-imaging process. My three things are, architect the brand, disrupt the market, and lead your tribe. Those are my three things, kind of a process that I take people through. It starts with that architecture, and then we talk about how do we communicate and articulate that. And then what does that look like from a leadership perspective? How are you going to get people to create tribal unity and camaraderie around it, and not just be, the dictator that sits on top of the hill? So that's kind of the process that I take them through. And to be honest, I'm fortunate enough that a lot of it's organic referral. So they're already knowing kind of where I'm in that spot. So it's a lot easier to talk to people. You're a perfect example when you got to talk to payment. You got to talk to payment. Fortunately, that's the kind of, I want that to kind of create a culture for all of us so that we're not selling. All we're doing is talking.
Absolutely.
All we're doing is having conversations. And naturally we come together and we create some collaborative work that works.
You're a perfect guest because you just answered the next question I was about to ask you, which was, how are you getting your clients? So beautiful. And one thing that I keep on not only experiencing myself on my podcast as a result of my podcast, but also I teach and I talk about all day long is when you connect, because what is business, as I told you last time, business at the end of the day is not numbers game. Sure, numbers matter, but business is a relationship nurturing process. We do business with people we can connect, relate, and trust. Once you build that relationship, that trust, to whatever it means, for me, it's podcast. than doing business. You don't have to sell, you don't have to pitch, you don't have to, as like saying, maybe you will laugh, you don't have to seduce or kidnap someone to do business with them. It's going to be a natural, organic progression. That's the
Yeah.
best way to do business. Hey, what do you do, Tucker? I do this. Oh, I do this. Hey, this is exactly what I need. Can you help me? Sure. Let's talk after. This is
Yeah.
how business is supposed to be, as opposed to being hunted and hey, or trying to be closed, the sold, you know.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
crazy. Wow.
Yeah, I knew I was onto something when my daughter finally said, if somebody said, "Oh, what does your dad do?" "Oh, he goes to meetings." Like that's what she thought I did and now she says he helps people. He helps people tell stories.
You know
And I'm
when
like,
you're
okay,
talking, you know when you're
I,
talking, I didn't want to interrupt you, but one idea that came to mind, it would be a powerful topic for a podcast with just one question. What is the impact you're having around you in the world? Just one question. Just invite key players and ask them that question. Let them talk for however long they want.
yeah.
Maybe I will do that. If I do that,
That'd be kind of an interesting way if it's ever been done up like a podcast roundtable,
yeah.
where it's like multiple guests and it's what you're doing now, almost like the popcorn effect where you're it's kind of like what comes to mind first, and you're just hearing it from different perspectives. That could be a really interesting way to do it.
To take that even higher and further, imagine, let's say we host an event and we invite some high-powered CEOs from Fortune 50. Instead of asking them, okay, so what's your revenue? We ask them, what is the impact you're having around you in the world? Talk about the impact you and your company are having in the world.
Yeah,
Imagine if companies were to build their businesses, the board of directors, their objectives around the impact
yeah.
as opposed to revenues. Wow.
Well, we may just have our first Leaders of the Heart Summit. That's happening in a few.
Well, the book is coming up in October, sorry, on Friday, September 30th, and maybe the summit is definitely the next step.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
do it.
I'm with you on that one.
Absolutely love that. Now, speaking of impact, share with us an example of the greatest, most remarkable impact you've had with one of your clients so far.
Ooh, that's a good one. Here is one of my favorite stories. And it may not necessarily be the greatest impact, but it's the one I feel really very, very connected to. And you'll know why when I tell it. So I was introduced to a young gentleman, 27 years old, and he came to me and said, listen, I have a mission and I don't know what to do with it. And he hates his day job. He's doing it to pay the bills. He's got a young family. And I started to talk to him and he said, I've suffered from social anxiety my entire life and I had to overcome it on my own. And I said, okay, well, let's create a mission. What's your mission? I don't know. So we sat there and we created a mission. We're going to help 1 million teens go from socially anxious to socially confident.
Love
We're
that.
going to do it. And like, where do we start? Okay, let's do a TEDx talk. He did a TEDx talk. Okay, now how do we start community? Let's connect. Let's use LinkedIn. Let's use your source. Let's use your story to create impact. Okay, be vulnerable. So I gave him a strategy to go out, and he recently spoke at his alma mater, his high school. He recently just got picked up to speak to a school in Malaysia. They found him
Whoa.
helping because it's highly stigmatized in Malaysia, and so he was talking about social anxiety with high schoolers. And then I said, reach out to your local TV stations. I mean, we're going back to school. We have all of these things coming out of the pandemic. We're seeing the numbers skyrocket around teen mental health. He's been on 6 TV stations. And I said, okay, now that you've been on, go back to him. Become a correspondent. He just
Bingo.
found out he's going to be a correspondent for a local TV station for teen mental health. And it's just like all of these things. It's like, don't be afraid. Don't be fearful. Just go out and do it. And here's this guy a year ago who's like, I have no way to help. What do I do? And just follow the path, follow your passion, do it. That to me, and I don't know how many lives he's touched yet, but his TEDx talk is taking off. I just know that every time I talk to him, he's got this huge smile on his face. He's completely removed a lot of that anxiety out of his life, and he's helping. I mean, that's just one of those success stories that I bottle it up and I share it with everyone because a lot of, he's like, I'm in my 20s. What kind of impact can I have? A
You know,
shitload.
Tucker, I would be honored to have this guy on my podcast.
He would be a great one. Kyle
Please
would be great.
connect us, please.
I will connect you.
Awesome.
So soft spoken at the same time. I've watched his voice grow
Oh yeah.
over the last year, and he's putting content out there. He's reaching out to organizations. He's connecting with amazing people on LinkedIn. He's getting on I mean, it's just yes, absolutely.
Is he currently in the US or in Malaysia?
Yeah, he's in outside of Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh, beautiful.
So
Okay, please.
yeah,
I would be honored
on
to.
the Indiana, Kentucky
Yeah,
side.
yeah, no, sure. Okay, beautiful. Wow. Let's wrap this up. And to finish off, I'd like to ask you a series of rapid fire questions
Uh-oh.
on advices. Ready?
Oh no.
Not vices, advices. All right. Because we can do an entire podcast just on
That's
vices.
a whole nother podcast that I don't want published.
No,
Okay, let's.
absolutely no. I don't blame you. I don't want that. Anyway, so what would you say has been the best piece of advice you've received so far in your life?
It's okay to ask for help.
Love that. What's the worst piece of advice you've received so far?
Um, um, uh, um,
Other than get a job.
just yeah, it's if it's making you money, don't fix it. Don't break or what if it ain't broke, don't fix it if it's making you money.
Yeah, I agree.
I did that for 10 years. Didn't work.
hmm Imagine that you were blessed with a time machine. You can go back in time and sit face to face with an 18-year-old Tucker. What's the number one piece of advice you would give to him, knowing all that you know now?
Don't live under others' expectations.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Now, do you have your own podcast yet?
Let's just say I've started and stopped it about 5 times, Payman.
What was the reason?
It was called it was called Faith, Fatherhood, and Freedom, and it was
Wow.
really kind of documenting me coming out of
hmm
the last 7 years. And honestly, it's just time and resources. It's just
Yeah.
getting the process down. You
hmm
know that.
Yes. So imagine now that you have a very successful podcast, and today you're interviewing the most special person in the world for you, which is yourself. You're interviewing yourself. What's the
Oh
first
gosh.
question you want to ask yourself? Don't think too much. What is the first question that comes to your mind?
Why did you deny your strengths for so many years?
And what's your answer?
I was afraid.
Love?
Failure, rejection.
I see. Yeah. That was a big one. I agree. Now the last.
Whoa. That that was heavy.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, no, no. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing it. Now the last question, and that's my favorite question to ask, is what is the smallest thing you've done in your life that has had the greatest positive impact in both your life and business so far? For me, it's been starting my podcast. What about you, Tucker?
Resigning from a job that was taking me down.
Love that for that. Beautiful. If someone wants to connect with you, what's the best way to do so?
Uh, Definitely on social. I like to say, and so far it's ring true for the last 48 years of my life. There is no other Tucker Stine, Stine, in the world. So you can Google that, and it
That's a
takes you.
miracle.
Yes, that is a miracle. But Tucker Stine, again, it's stine.com. Everything that you can learn about me there. Otherwise, I'm on all the socials. You can search it there. But yeah, start with the website, and I've got an easy way to connect with me, and I will always connect with someone if they reach out. That's also another thing that I've learned is no connection is too small.
No connection is too small. I love that. One thing that just talking to you that would be a phenomenal business, very lucrative for you to start, would be a t-shirt company with all these wonderful quotes you just come up with. Seriously. you know? Seriously.
You could be the COO, and I'll figure out. You could be the operator. I'll give you a big cut of it.
All right. Let's talk about after. Okay, awesome. Now, listen, Tucker, absolutely pleasure, honor talking to you. Absolutely love talking to you. We can talk for hours. It's already 2 hours now, going on
Are
3
we?
hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Listen, I salute you. You're a true leader with a heart. Keep shining your light. Keep blessing the world with your presence, with your impact, with everything you're doing. Stay safe. Stay awesome. God bless you, my friend. Talk to you very soon.
Thank you, Payman.
Cheers.
Awesome.
Bye bye.
Cheers.